astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start.
2, 1.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jeranism, back with another live video for you this evening. Sorry I started so late. I did not know that IPS was going to be having his hangout and didn't want to step on any toes, so try and get that organized in the future so that that doesn't happen, because that's not what's supposed to happen. So, didn't want to step on any toes. Hope you guys are all doing well. That is the ultimate goal. So this should be a quick one. I don't think I'm going to start, or I'm not going to cover too many items. I think I just have basically two things I want to cover. 1 second now, I'm testing myself, making sure that I'm there. Good. So I hope everybody's well, and I'll also check the chat here after I do a few things. I did want to read a quick news story. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it's a joke if there ever was one. This news story is: Denver physicist warns public that the fidget spinners could affect Earth's center of gravity. So one of the nation's most respected physicists has warned that fidget spinners, a fad device popular with students, could have a harmful effect on the Earth's center of gravity. In a research paper published in a leading scientific journal, Professor Scott Lee of Denver, Colorado, has outlined his findings that suggest the exponential growth of fidget spinners could theoretically throw the Earth's center of gravity out of alignment. While an individual fidget spinner is not going to cause any issues, the concern here is that with these toys becoming increasingly popular, their combined use threatens to create a cascade effect that could have wide implications. Professor Lee outlined how a cascade of fidget spinners rotating in the same direction could impact the rotation of Earth. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call a little bit of bullshit on this one. No doubt about it. His calculation is that just a 0.06% variation in the Earth's orbit could cause widespread effects to our climate. Seasons would change overnight. Instead of summer, it would become winter immediately for one side of the globe, while the other side would suffer 10 months per year of blinding heat. The flow on effects to civilization would be huge. It says that his conservative estimate is that we would need over 10 million spinners, and if they were all spinning in the same direction at the same time, that we'd be risking the planetary equilibrium. Yeah, as I said, if you believe this, well, then I've got a beachfront property for you in Denver, Colorado. Available for sale right now. Act quickly before it's too late. So, I thought that story was pretty classic. So, the two things I wanted to cover today, if you saw my video about, well, what originally happened was I did the video on the view that we get of the Canigou Peak, and that is happening from Aloche, which is in France. And then, what's his name? Awake Souls came out with a video saying, I'm deceiving everybody. It's a deception. I've infiltrated the flat Earth just to put in some bullshit views of 160 miles, and it's not possible. Of course, all that fun stuff. So what I'm going to show you now is what I think might be happening, or what I am thinking is maybe his thought process, and had to think about it again to say, okay, is this what he kind of means here? So when we're looking at, make sure this is showing on the screen, there we go. When we're looking at this scene here, what I think people might not be realizing, which I thought was self-explanatory, but maybe not, is you cannot see 160 miles. Okay, that's impossible. There's too much atmospheric effects. You can't see that far. So I'm not saying that we're seeing the actual mountain here. This is the mountain that's here is blocking out the sunlight behind it. So perhaps he's confused because he might be thinking that I'm saying that we can see that mountain, but you cannot see it. For instance, if the sun is not here, it would look like this. Okay, so the entire horizon would look completely blank. That the only reason you can see the mountain, and you're not technically, it's not like we're seeing this mountain. What we're seeing is the sun blocked out by the shape of the mountain, which is, you know, technically, I guess, depending on how you look at it, that could be considered seeing it, but you're not going to see any features on it. You're not going to see a color. You're not going to see anything like that. This is just the sun being blocked out, and that's why, as I said, it's very rare. It's also one of the, I believe it's the current world record. Actually, I think there might be one longer for views. And so when we look at things like, does this one show? Yeah, so same thing back here. This is just because you're blocking out this view. If it was, say, noon, you would not see anything. Okay, so let me bring up another one here. Okay, so for instance here, if it was, the sun was up here, well, you wouldn't see this mountain range. It would look like the horizon line was perfectly across. You would see nothing here because it's too far to see. Now, what you can see here is that this mountain range has now blocked that portion of the sun, so we're seeing the form of the mountain. So that's my question, or my guess, as to what he's so confused about, because he's saying we can't see 160 miles, it's impossible. All these cameras say they only see 32 miles. Well, that's great. This is a complete and total anomaly in the fact that it happens only 2 days a year, November 1st and February 16th. And you can go to Aloche, France. It's 1,000 feet high, and you can watch it. And there's a ton of people that do it. In fact, we'll see if I can bring up the website here. If you just search Canigou from Aloche, and what upsets me more than anything about that is when, you know, these are the kind of things that are huge proofs, and you know, you don't want to just shit on things. He was saying things like, oh, well, this is a deception, it's been placed here. No, they don't put the exact things they don't want out there. They don't want to know that you can see 160 miles. That's so, rather than celebrate it and go look it up and see, oh yeah, there's a bunch of people who, oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Yeah, there's a bunch of people who see it. Now, most of these websites are in French, which creates a little bit of a problem. But like, this entire website is devoted to this event. So for some idiot, for lack of a better word, to make a video saying Jeran is deceiving you by I'm showing an observation that people make every year, twice a year. People actually travel to go watch this. So, you know, Jason is just, I don't know what to tell you about that guy. Rather than go do some research, just call everything CGI. Oh, it's CGI. It's got to be CGI. This is CGI footage here. Well, if I had found one picture, then I wouldn't be bringing it up. This is something that I researched and saw, no, this is absolutely happens. It's interesting, too. If you get down here, let me translate this whole box. Because if I remember right, even the owner of this website questioned the... Hello? Translate this page. Okay, let me see. Over here, we've got... where was it? My gear, Canigou, solar disk, the atmospheric tables. And of course, this person is a believer in the globe, and so they've got their... Here's the explanations of phenomena. Look at what you have to go through to explain this. Oh, well, let's see here. You know, we've got this going on, and the sun's really here, and it's shining up, and it's pushing the mountain up to here, which is making the sun look like it's here, but really saying, well, what a joke that anybody buys this stuff anymore. So what they're basically saying is the sun is here, shining on the mountain here, bending the image to the observer here, and so it appears to us that it looks like it's up here. This is what they actually have to sell people on, which is just crazy. Let me bring this up if I can. Try and translate this page. And is this the one? So, but even the owner gets to the end and is... why is that thing not working when I click it? There we go. Okay. And you know how it is when you translate sites. I mean, it's not good. It's, you know, not good at all. Let me see if I can find what I was talking about. So he was questioning, if I remember right, he's questioning the idea of it being a mirage. So you'll see that there's a section here, why those dates, what is the story. It talks about the forecast, because you can even, I guess, see it with the moon. I've never looked into this much, but I guess when the moon would rise or set in the same spot, you would have the same effect. Not, of course, because of this nonsense, but because you live on a plane, and in certain areas, under certain conditions, you can see proof that you live on a plane. So you don't need to believe in the magical ball. You don't need to believe in flying through the infinite space. You don't need to believe that you orbit the sun. All those fun things can go out the window once you realize that your senses and observation tells you exactly where you live, and you can let some men tell you some magical formulas if you want. That's up to you. Let me see if I can find where it was. I thought it was right here somewhere. Atmospheric refraction formula. So this is some sort of formula like this. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They're showing here, these are all your math equations, your betas, your thetas, your you name it. Oh, in conclusion, maybe this is where it was. Let me see, translate this. Okay. Nope, this isn't where it is, but let's read this anyway. In conclusion, it appears that the height of the horizon Canigou observed since Alash Marcel that it is relatively insensitive to the effect of temperature and pressure within variations detected on a period of 30 years. So, you know, these guys have been observing this for years. So, Jason, if you're out there, why don't you put a zipper on that hole on your face and do some research one time. One time. Before you go yelling and screaming that there's no 24-hour sun in the north, and before you go yelling and screaming that there's no such thing as sniping, that all your nonsense, just zip it up. What was that? I don't know what just happened on my screen. That was a weird noise. No, don't know what happened. Sorry. Okay, so let's see what else. He says, yet another item that's not included in this calculation is the moisture content in the lower layers of the atmosphere. Even though the trip is mainly done over the sea, the humidity is involved, presumably also in large part to changes that we have seen during observations from one place. So it wasn't where I was talking about, because he did kind of question the idea of it being a mirage, but now I don't even see the word mirage anywhere. Maybe I'm missing it. Presentation, Alash. So this is pictures. Let's check this out. So, I mean, when you see something like this, yeah, you know, I mean, who am I to say, well, this can't be CGI? Because, of course, I believe a lot of what NASA puts out is CGI, but nobody has a budget to put this out. And again, we have to ask ourselves the question, why would they be putting out something as a deception that is what they don't want to see? It certainly isn't the case. They don't want this to be the case. And when they built up the whole idea of the globe, when they built up the numbers and the curvature formula, the last thing they wanted was for occasionally, look at this, this is the moon here, occasionally for something like this to happen, because it was going to bring up questions. So they don't want this exactly. But yeah, so I guess, you know, I did challenge Jason, if he's interested, to bet me. I'm willing to put my money that this is something that happens, that I don't think there's any reason why anybody would lie about it. Another interesting thing is, if you notice here, I just was thinking about this, so the moon is red. Okay, so why is the moon red? You know, think about that one, because usually we get a red moon when we're talking about it being, so this must be somehow, they must consider it being in the Earth's shadow here. It's just the atmospheric shadow is all it is. Picture the sun is straight behind you, you're looking across at the moon, and all the light's going directly across and lighting up the moon red. So that's why we have sunsets that are red. And let's see here. So this one here is interesting. What is this one? The sun or the moon? So, I mean, that's another one that, now I'm not saying this is, because I don't know where this is from. Is it the same spot? But see how you can see this outline here? Now again, this is not, you're not seeing this mountain. So that maybe that's where the confusion comes in. You cannot see this far. But with the sun behind it, which you can see, it's having portions of it blocked out. So that's probably the best way I can explain it, at least a little better than before. Let's see here if I can find, where was the whole idea of the mirage? Atmosphere, solar horizon. Here we go. Now I see it. If that was there the whole time, I'm pretty pissed. Let's see here. We're going to translate this page. Just because I think it's interesting when somebody's put, look at the work this person who built this site has gone through. This is nonsense. And you get to the very end here, and you'll notice something interesting. So he says, having traveled encyclopedias and spent long periods surfing the net, I found that the concept of mirage encompasses all phenomenon, from near or far, altering the path of light rays in a continuous and gradual manner, without so far total reflection and thus occurrence of a reverse secondary image. This is for refraction close to the horizon, which brings up the highest distant objects in the sky than they really are in reality, as in the case of the stars setting in the horizon. So, in the sense accepted and generally widespread, we are in the presence of a mirage, in the case of Canigou, in a sense that we are actually observing a higher image above the horizon than the actual mountain range. So, now he stops and says, "Note to the reader that meets this definition. No need to continue reading the following. Far be it for me to get into a controversy. I just book you a little reflection." So now he's explained everything that he's found out. He explains the scientific understanding. And then he says, "Personally, I would have preferred a distinction to be made between the phenomenon that generated inverted second image obtained after a total reflection at least, and for refraction phenomenon always observed near the horizon moves the main image and only above the horizon. Of course, everything is a matter of convention, but this is too general of a definition and it bothers me." Move this box. "And it bothers me because when I watch a sunset on the horizon, I do not have the feeling of being in the presence of a mirage, just because there is a complete continuity of the apparent movement of the sun in the sky from sunrise to sunset. The term mirage, in a sense of visiting, often referred to a surprising or strange occurrence, does not seem appropriate to me in the case of the sun on the horizon, and because it does not correspond to something that occurs unexpectedly, known as duration is ephemeral, and that it is not reproducible from one day to another. If the Canigou, in my opinion," stop bringing up that box, "is not a phenomenon to be classified in the category of mirages, it is rather to be classified in the phenomenon of ordinary refraction, since there is no mirror image, not because it was stopped by an obstacle, but because there is not another possible path for light rays to reach us. We observe the chain of Canigou, a right image in the optical sense, i.e. not inverted, which is higher on the horizon because of atmospheric refraction. Like the stars that undergo so more pronounced atmospheric refraction, since it is, in this case, for light to pass through all the atmospheric layers. You guessed it, for me Canigou is a phenomenon of ordinary refractive, but that the circumstances of his observation really make it not ordinary at all. If you wish to review the subject, you can send me a message. I will make sure to open a special page on this subject to allege your debate." So I just thought it was interesting, but anybody who just makes a video saying Jeran is deceiving you by showing you things that actually happen has lost their mind, but you should have realized that months ago on the case and subject. So I'll check the chat in a second, see if anybody has any questions on that before I move on to the second thing. Let me see if I can bring the chat up here. Okay, that didn't work. Come on, chat. So again, I hope everybody is well. If you do have a question for me, just type question in all capitals and then go ahead and give me your question. This way I can answer it before I move on. Hopefully the chat is caught up. This doesn't look like it's moving. How can you get global warming out of a flat earth? It changes everything for Al Gore. Al Gore equals truth. No. Okay, so it doesn't look like anybody. Somebody saw the island of St. Thomas 40 miles away with binoculars. How do you explain mirages? Well, a mirage is exactly what we know it to be, which is a temperature differential and atmospherics, which is causing that wavy, almost distorted. We're going to get into that a little bit when we talk about buildings being obscured, but that's what's definitely going on there. So mirages, and I've gone over this before too. You've got, let's go look at mirages real quick because they're an interesting subject. If you look up the Wikipedia for mirages, they list, I think, 3 different types. Let's see how many. So they've got inferior, heat haze, which we know this is, it's not really a, I guess it can be considered a mirage. We know what it is when you've seen jet planes or airplanes that have that heat wave. Then they talk about a superior mirage and a fata morgana, nighttime mirages, mirage of astronomical objects. But just to go back real quick to what that person was saying on that site, is this is the same problem we should all have, is that there is no upside down image, and so it's not really a mirage. They'll tell you it is a superior mirage, but it simply isn't. And the reason that they don't want to employ refraction is it's just ridiculous to use that in that situation. You have to believe then that when we see the sun setting, that it's already way below the horizon. So what he said there in his, it was broken translated English, But he was saying, well, that doesn't seem right because we see the sun move continuously throughout the sky. So it's not like the sun kind of is in the sky and then all of a sudden it races to a certain point. And no. So we actually see the sun doing what we observe it to do. One continuous motion, one continuous speed. And that's why the whole idea of refraction is nonsense. Because if you go to like Metabunk or something like that, those guys will just describe it as saying, well, when you think you see the sun, you're actually seeing the sun below the horizon. And that's just, I mean, the fact that people will believe that tells me they'll believe anything. That's why it's not surprising to me that they were able to get this globe believed, because people just believe what they're told and they think they're smart because they can repeat it. So it could be anything. Let me go back and check if there's any chat here. But I wanted to go through these mirages just so we understand the different types, because a superior mirage versus a inferior mirage. So an inferior mirage is like when you go to the desert and you think you see a pool of water. It's called inferior because the mirage is located under the object. So whenever you see like a tree and then you see kind of the reflection of the tree on the ground, that's called an inferior mirage. And then they say a superior mirage. Okay, so let's read that. A superior mirage occurs when the air below the line of sight is colder than the air above it. This unusual arrangement is called a temperature inversion, since warm air above cold air is the opposite of the normal temperature gradient. Passing through the temperature inversion, the light rays are bent down, and so the image appears above the true object, hence the name superior. Superior mirages are in general less common than inferior mirages, but when they do occur, they tend to be more stable, as cold air has a tendency to move up and warm air has no tendency to move down. Superior mirages are quite common in polar regions, especially over large sheets of ice. You know, it's funny. I wonder if I have images of this. I think that they've changed this since I last saw it. It's actually, they did not used to describe it as it being stable at all. And is this where it says a mirage in contrast to hallucination? No. The funny one was when they described, I think it was it refraction? The one where it says could be above or below, shortened or squished. God, what was that? Maybe it was refraction. I just want to look that up real quick. Refraction. Is that where it was? There's one description of something that is so funny. No, I don't think this is it. I don't remember what it was. Because refraction is altered, usually causing a change in direction. Now, there was something that talked about it being shortened or elongated or fattened or shortened or spread out, or it was just like every possible combination. I'll try to remember that for next time. Don't remember what it was. But let's go back to mirages just so we can finish off with superior mirage. So they're saying that it appears above the item. So we see that here in this water. Okay, so you can see the cat. It's probably, this is the real cat, but we see it appearing a little bit higher. But that's not what's happening, you know, here. It's not, we're not getting anything brought up. Plus, think of how high that would have to be lifted. Almost, well, definitely thousands of feet. Probably pretty close to a mile. Now, a Fata Morgana, which I've actually seen myself, if we bring those up, is when you see something like, well, this is not really a Fata Morgana. Oh, shoot. My bad. Not even showing you what I'm looking at. This is the boat sitting on the water. So this is the kind of example I'm talking about that just upsets me, because I'm not claiming to be somebody smart, but I am claiming to be able to know the truth of some things and then know when people are lying. So when they call this this is water. The boat is not raised up or anything. This is water. This is on water. This is just the hard line of the horizon. Okay? So that upsets me, because if science were what we're taught and what it should be, then a scientist would say, no, you've falsely identified this. It's not what's happening. This is a Fata Morgana. Okay? This is when it's reflecting on the air above it. Okay, so this is not that this boat is upside down on the water. This boat is on the water. This boat is being displayed to you through the atmospheric effects here that is causing it to be upside down. So we know it's a Fata Morgana when we see that dual image. I know there's one, if I look it up, is this the one that's in, Santa Cruz, Moss Landing. This is one that people have seen a lot probably, and I know we live, probably 20 minutes from here, 15 minutes. from these. Oh, that's a terrible picture. There's a better one online when you go and look at the towers. There's these PG&E like energy towers, and sometimes they can get caught up in this kind of Fata Morgana where they're displayed weird. So this is kind of a Fata Morgana here. Is this a video? Yeah, you can kind of see that. So now the question becomes, when we see the buildings looking across Lake Michigan, and we see the buildings of Chicago, are those displaying like this? Are they breaking up? Are they kind of gross? Do they change minute to minute? See how these are kind of stretching and they just look like a distorted mess? This is not what we're seeing when we look at Chicago. And actually, if you look over here, this is not what we're seeing here either. I'll transition this so you can see. This is not a distorted image. This is not wavy. This is not changing. It's not duplicating on top of itself. This is that portion of the sun being blocked out by that mountain range. Again, you're not seeing the mountain range. You are seeing the sun and having part of it obscured. It just so happens to match perfectly to the mountain range. Bring this back up here. So, and I think we have covered that. Let's see here. So again, you'll see a lot of the Fata Morganas like this, and that might be the last one on here. A lot of times in the old days, there was stories about them being, you know, wandering ships, and this one's called the Flying Dutchman, because they would see things like this where it was inverted and upside down. So really what it comes down to is you've got two different types of mirages. You've got a Fata Morgana, where things are flipped on top of each other, upside down, and you've got an inferior mirage, which is when you've got a reflection, basically, of something onto the ground. Usually it's seen in the streets or in a desert. Let's see if they've got any good pictures of that one. So this is their picture of an inferior mirage. So see, this is just a reflection. Basically what's happening here is this mountain is being reflected here. Can we get closer? So is this roof. You can see it's reflected here. And that is an inferior mirage. So kind of the lie becomes whatever they're calling a superior mirage. Because what is a superior mirage? It's just something that's been employed so that when you've got these distances and you're seeing things, they can just say, oh, it was a superior mirage. Let's read right here. Actually, here's something about the Earth's curvature. What do you know? So reading this part here, it says superior mirages can have a striking effect due to the Earth's curvature. Were the Earth flat, light rays that bend down would soon hit the ground, and only nearby objects would be affected. What? Since Earth is round, if their downward bending curve is about the same as the curvature of the Earth, oh, just perfectly, just so lucky, light rays can travel large distances, perhaps from beyond the horizon. They said perhaps from beyond the... We just mentioned this because perhaps from behind the horizon, there's sometimes, occasionally, some images will be shown, and we're just throwing it into this Wikipedia article. I don't know why. This was observed and documented for the first time in 1596 when a ship under the command of some William something in search of a northeast passage became stuck in the ice at Novaya something. The crew was forced to endure the polar winter there. They saw their midwinter night come to an end with the rise of the distorted sun about 2 weeks earlier than expected. It was not until the 20th century that science could explain the reason. The real sun had been below the horizon, but its light rays followed the curvature of Earth. This effect is often called a Novaya Semaya mirage. For every 69 miles, the light rays can travel parallel to the Earth's surface. The sun will appear 1 degree higher on the horizon. The inversion layer must have just the right temperature gradient over the whole distance to make this possible. So, I mean, if that's the case, then why would it happen on 2 predictable dates at Canigao in France? It doesn't even make sense. In the same way, ships that are in reality so far away that they... oh, they're giving away my Titanic info. In the same way, ships that are in reality so far away that they should not be visible above the geometric horizon may appear on the horizon, or even above the horizon as superior mirages. This may explain some stories about flying ships or coastal cities in the sky. So this is where they're lying. If you're seeing something in the sky, then that is a Fata Morgana. Okay, it's not, you know, it could be a type of superior mirage, but really let's just call it a Fata Morgana, which then leads out the idea of superior mirage. Because what is the superior mirage that is not a Fata Morgana? What is that? They're saying it's what we're looking at here at Canigao. So they're just they're just employing superior mirage is when the item is perfect. It's not distorted. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just been lifted up and magically placed for you at the horizon. This is where you need to be smart enough to call bullshit and say, no, this is not distorted. This is because I'm seeing what's really there, not what is being lifted. So it says there are some examples of so-called Arctic mirages or Hillingar in the Icelandic, which usually that's like a whiteout more than anything. If the vertical temperature gradient is 12.9 degrees Celsius per 100 meters, where the positive sign means temperature gets hotter as one goes higher, then the horizontal light rays will just follow the curvature of Earth and the horizon will appear flat. If the gradient is less, as it almost always is, the rays are not bent enough and get lost in space, which is the normal situation of a spherical convex horizon. Where is there a spherical convex horizon? In some situations, distant objects can get elevated or lowered, stretched or shortened with no mirage involved. This is the exact words. This is the kind of thing that, you know, I can't pass along to you guys as much as I feel it inside me. This is the exact sentence that used to be placed. If you just remember 5 minutes ago, I was saying shortened or elevated, distant or not. So this line here used to be right at the beginning of this article of Wikipedia. Oh, you can actually check, can't you? View history. I don't actually do this very often, but I think you can go. Let's go to 2015. Show. Is that all you have to do? I don't even know how to do this. Can you read the old pages?
Yeah,
like,
go to,
actually see them?
yeah, you have to go to Wayback Machine, but you can.
Oh, you can't do it here where the edits are in the back?
Not really. No, Wayback Machine. Okay.
That's better. Let me do that. I'm just going to go to the Wayback Machine real quick because I want to make sure I validate this for myself. Because it used to be in this first. Now they've completely changed the first sentence to mean something totally different. So I'm going to check this out in the Wayback Machine. Let's go here, Wayback Machine. And see if we can find out if this has changed. Paste. And no, not donate. Browse history. Okay, so let's go back to, I don't know, let's go to 2011. And what's a fun date? September 16th. A mirage is a naturally occurring optical phenomenon in which light rays are bent to produce a displaced image of distant objects in the sky. The word comes to English in the French mirage. Mirages can be categorized as inferior, meaning lower, superior, meaning higher, or fata morgana. One kind of superior mirage consisting of a series of unusually elaborate, vertically stacked images. Let's see here. Cause. Light rays pass. Inferior mirage from this. Yeah, it doesn't look like this is. They can have it down here. That would. No. Distortions of the image of bending. Well, it's definitely shorter back then. But I'm trying to find the... Yeah, man, I could have sworn they... I think it's the same. I think that they changed this.
Well, it changes.
No, I'm saying I think that the Wayback Machine is not showing me the actual screenshot from that date. It's the same as it is now.
Well, we'll try a different date. Try like 2009 or 2012 or something.
Let me see here.
Back and
Vertically
forth, people
stacked.
change things back and forth.
Yeah, I'll have to check on that one and see if I can find it in the actual Wikipedia history. I thought you could find it here. Let me see. Help, page history, edit, number of watchers, revision history.
It might have been for a different definition.
Yeah, it might have been something else like Superior Mirage or something. Because I thought that it definitely said that in the first sentence. I remember reading it in a video at some point because I thought it was hilarious that it could basically do anything, and then it says, or with no mirage involved.
Sounds like Gravity.
Yeah, that's always fun. If you want a fun one just to laugh at, go to Gravity for Wikipedia. Let's see if they change that, because that used to be hilarious. One time, remember, we put God in the place of...
Yeah, that was funny.
So it says, gravity or gravitation is a natural phenomenon. Yeah, this is the sentence. They haven't changed this one. So gravity or gravitation is a natural phenomenon by which all things with mass are brought toward or gravitate toward one another, including planets, stars, and galaxies. Since energy and mass are equivalent, all forms of energy, including light, also cause gravitation and are under the influence of it. On Earth, gravity gives weight to physical objects and causes the ocean tides. The gravitational attraction of the original gaseous matter present in the universe caused it to begin coalescing, forming stars, and the stars to group together into galaxies. So gravity is responsible for many of the large-scale structures in the universe. Gravity has an infinite range, although its effects become increasingly weaker on further objects. Now this is the funniest paragraph ever written. Gravity is most accurately described by the general theory of relativity proposed by Einstein in 1915, which describes gravity not as a force, but as a consequence of the curvature of spacetime, caused by the uneven distribution of mass and energy. The most extreme example of this curvature of spacetime is a black hole, for which nothing can escape once past its event horizon, not even light. More gravity results in gravitational time dilation, where time lapses more slowly at a lower, stronger gravitational potential. However, for most applications, gravity is well approximated by Newton's law of universal gravitation, which describes gravity as the force which causes any two bodies to be attracted to each other, with the force proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Sorry, this is the paragraph that's funny. Gravity is the weakest of the four fundamental interactions of nature. The gravitational attraction is approximately 10 to the 38 times weaker than the strong force, 10 to the 36 times weaker than the electromagnetic force, and 10 to the 29th times weaker than the weak force. As a consequence, gravity has a negligible influence on the behavior of subatomic particles, and plays no role in determining the internal properties of everyday matter. But see quantum gravity. On the other hand, gravity is the dominant interaction at the macroscopic scale, and is the cause of the formation, shape and trajectory, orbits of astronomical bodies. It is responsible for various phenomena observed on Earth and throughout the universe. For example, it causes the Earth and the other planets to orbit the Sun, the Moon to orbit the Earth, the formation of tides, the formation and evolution of the solar system, stars, and galaxies. It's just hilarious. That's a good one. Very fun. So what I wanted to do, the second thing was talk about, I hear it a bunch. I hear people asking, when you show some distance, like we were looking at here with the transition, you always get people asking, well, how come we see, let's go to this picture here. Okay, for instance here, people take this picture and say, well, the fact that there's water covering these buildings means that the Earth is curved. That's the way they describe it. So I want to show you a few things of why that is not the case. Let's see if this works here. I'm going to try and show you a little drawing pad here if I can. And let's see here, transition. Okay, so hopefully you should be seeing a blue template where I can draw on it. Okay, good. So one thing that's interesting is there can never be a hump of water between you and somewhere else. Okay, you may think, you may have been told, or you might, but let's figure out why not. So if there's this ball here, and we are at the top of it, or you can even anywhere. I remember at the beginning I used to think, well, let's say we put a person here and a person here, that both people, to me, it looks like there's a hump of water between them, right? But here's the problem with that, and we will get you a little closer. Here's the problem with that, is that actually the line is parallel to the Earth, the tangent line. So let's pretend like this is a big circle like this. Okay, so we've got this person here and this person here. Again, it looks like there's a hump of water here, but this person's eye line is parallel to it's the tangent, okay, the parallel to the tangent. So this line kind of comes out here like this, which means from their view, don't know what that was. From their view, they are looking straight out like your eyes are, right? You're standing at the beach, you're looking out, and your line of sight is running parallel to the Earth. Okay, and there's no hump of water that ever rises. Water falls from your feet. The ground falls from your feet. There's nothing that ever rises in front, unless you're talking about, topographical issues. But we're pretending it's a perfect sphere right now. So this person here at the top is looking again. Their eyes would be going straight out this way. Okay, so that means that the water or the Earth always falls away from your feet. So number one thing, and you may have seen this, maybe I can bring it up here if I get over here. You've probably seen before, if we go to the gravity calculator, or the curvature calculator. Oops, I got to transition this. Okay, so one of the things that happened as a result of this work that we're doing, I think it was Rob Skiba who actually caused it. you'll now see that before, what they used to draw here was a line straight up and down. Okay, this blue line used to be straight up and down. This red line used to be straight up and down. Well, luckily, Rob Skiba called him out on it and said, no, this isn't correct, because what this does is it does create the illusion. See how this line is tilted here? Well, pretend it was straight up. Well, if it was straight up, then this dotted line would look like your eyesight, and you would say, well, this ground is rising up to the observer's eyesight. Or if this was a straight line, you'd think the same thing. So what Rob Skiba had him do was change it. Make sure that they move this line. That would be basically perpendicular to the earth. So you have to draw a perfect 90-degree angle here, and then at that point the eye line goes parallel with the tangent. And what that does is it eliminates any idea of anything ever rising to your eye level, talking about water over the ocean or anything like that. It's always falling away from you. Okay, so there is never a hump. So when we see water covering buildings, like we're looking at here, let me get it back over here. There it is. So there must be something going on here. Why is the water rising up or appearing to rise up and cover some of these buildings? And that is what we're going to look at right now and see why that happens. So the best way I can draw it is, I'm going to try and draw it like this. Give me this back. Okay, so if you're looking, let's say that we're going to be looking at side view first. Okay, so there's your flat water. Let's say you've got your Chicago buildings over here. And from this view over here, let's say this is the beach. Okay, so we've got our observer here looking this way. Okay, so we know that there is a atmospheric, oops, I mean to flip that page, sorry. Alright, so we know that there is the layer here, okay, that is like an atmospheric layer that we're having to look through. And what happens is, and Rob Skiba has done a great video on this, that this creates the lensing. Okay, so at a certain point, now these are like layers of air that I'm drawing here. Just imagine they're kind of like panes of glass. And as you're looking further and further through these panes of glass, these panes of air that are affected by this change from the cold water and the hot air, so as this is getting like distorted and you're looking through it, it's actually creating a lens. And the lens is what makes the buildings appear larger. Okay, so these appear larger. And it also, if you kind of imagine, and we'll kind of do this, that if this was a lens, and let's say instead of looking through the atmosphere, all of a sudden we kind of put a magnifying glass here. Imagine there's a magnifying glass. And this person was looking through. What would be the first thing that would be magnified through this magnifying glass? Well, it wouldn't be the buildings, it would be the water. Okay? Because this is the water here. You're looking from this perspective, this way. You're seeing through the lensing, which is increasing what is right behind it, which is the water, which causes the water to not rise up, but you're basically seeing a maximized view or an enlarged view of the water that's right behind it. And so it appears that the water is rising up. For instance, let's see if there's a picture here that better shows it. Oops, that's not the one I was looking for. I thought I had a picture of across the, is it this one? Oh, can't see these pictures, they're too small. Nope. Come on, which one is it? Doesn't look like that one. Sorry, I'm trying to find an image of, I'll have to go look for it. Oh wait, this one. Yeah, so what you're seeing here is, imagine we're looking across at this water, and about here where my mouse is, oops, sorry, there you go. So imagine we're looking here across at this water, and about here where my mouse is, say, that this would be where the bottom of the buildings would be, okay? But we're looking through, and this doesn't happen just when you're looking across the street or when you're looking down the street or across a football field. No, we're talking about miles and miles and miles of atmosphere. So it has to be, you know, somewhere where you're looking across 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles. And then what you've got is you've got all of that atmospheric lensing going on, and it's increasing what is right behind it. Well, what's right behind it? The water. And so the water is being magnified from our perspective, and the other thing it's magnifying is the actual buildings. If we go and look at Chicago, and one way to how do I figure this out? Basically, the best way to do this is look for distances like downtown New York from 60 or 70 miles. And there's some places you can see that. And what it is they're tiny. The buildings are tiny. See if I can find it. So let me see. View of New York, 70 miles. And you'll see how small the buildings are. So then you have to ask yourself, well, why are the buildings not... Okay, so let's see. Is this I think this might be the image I'm talking about. Oh, this is... Watertown DMA is just east of Lake Ontario, 70 miles north of Syracuse, and just 30 miles south of the Canadian border. So I believe this is it. Can I get the view image? Now I think one I've seen before. There's people standing on the hill. But basically, when you get down and you look at these images, sometimes you can see like a New York skyline back here, but the buildings are tiny. And I think I was wrong when I said 70. I think it is 35 miles. And that's what tells you, well, why at 35 miles are the buildings so tiny? Yet we can see across, well, the water is what's doing it. That's what tells us it's being affected by the atmosphere that's sitting right above the water, causing the lensing effect. When you're looking across land, you're not getting that. So that's why the buildings look bigger than they should, because you are increasing, but you're not bringing anything from beyond any horizon. You're magnifying the view that's there already. So you're getting a magnified view of the water, which is the first thing behind the magnifying, let's just call it a magnifying lens. You're looking at the water that's right after it, and then the buildings. And because that stretches all the way across your view, there's not like a magnifying glass, not like a circle in the middle of the water that you're looking through. The whole thing is causing that. Or the whole thing is displaying that. So I was trying to see if I could find this picture of New York I was talking about. Kind of look like this image. View of New York skyline from 35 miles. Okay, let me see if I can... I don't see the particular image I'm looking for, but there's one where there's some people standing on a hill and they're looking 35 miles. And I will try and find it for you, but and what that shows you is when you see that, you'll see the buildings are tiny. And so that's the first thing that made me say, well, why are those buildings, which most of them are around the same height, most of them are actually taller than the buildings in Chicago. So I said, well, how come I can see buildings across Lake Michigan at, I don't know, what is a conservative number, 45, 50 miles? But I can't see these buildings the same size. So we're going to go Chicago from Michigan. So I get people all the time asking, well, why are the buildings covered? The buildings shouldn't be covered at all, which is not true. They shouldn't be shown at all, especially like these buildings here. So again, at a certain point here, you're getting a magnified view. Boy, you didn't see any of that, did you? What's going on here? Browser. Sorry about that. That's what I was trying to show you. Okay, and I'm trying to see here if we can find a good image of these. So this is a pretty good one here. Where's that? Town of Dune Acres in Indiana. Never seen this image before. I'll have to check that one out. Nope. Okay, this one here. Okay, I guess we could look at this one, view image. So at a certain point here, and let's say it's right here where my mouse is, that you're looking through air. So people say, well, if the earth was flat, you'd be able to see the bottom of the buildings. Okay, well, here's the problem with that. If the earth was flat and you had no water here, just a cement walkway, let's say, and no atmospheric effects happening, then maybe you'd see the bottom. But to see the bottom of these buildings, which would be about down here, well, then you can't look through any atmospherics, because when you look through that layer that's sitting above the water, it's lensing everything behind it. Which again, you wouldn't be able to see these buildings. You shouldn't be able to see them from that far. Think of how small things get when you go a distance away from them. And so this is being lensed as well, but it's not being brought, it's impossible for it to bring it over the horizon or over the curvature. It's just increasing what's behind it. But think about it, if you're increasing the water first, and that would be the most of what there is, right? That you're looking at all the water from the place that lensing starts happening all the way to the shore, and then the buildings are there. So of course, what are you going to see is just the top half of the buildings. You're not going to see, and you can actually, maybe it's this white line, I don't really know. I think it's probably a little bit lower, right about here, but could be that white line. So anyway, I'm going to check one more image here, and then I'll check the chat, see if anybody's got questions on that or if I explained it decent. Again, you know, I'm not great at talking about these things. Scientists are the ones who have put years into working with this stuff, and who, if they were what we are told that they are, and if they cared about the truth, then they would step forward and be honest about some of these things, rather than to basically keep a lie going. Because it may look like, but again, think of how far these buildings are. I don't know what I remember saying 60 at one time, and then people saying that wasn't correct, so it might be 50. And it does change, because again, and see this black line here. Well, I don't know if you've ever been to the beach, but there's always that dark line in the ocean, which is really just because you're compacting more and more water. I mean, you're seeing only this much water, and then as you get here, you're seeing a ton more water stacked up on each other from that vantage point. And so, you know, if you figured out where these buildings would end up, that is where they end up. So, I mean, if you really wanted to figure out, well, where do the buildings, where would their bottoms be? Well, they'd be exactly where they're, if you put an overlay of the actual buildings or whatever, you would be able to see that. This one's cool. So again, this is not a mirage. And that's why, well, until recently, I had that at the beginning of my intro, because I think it's one of the most telling things that that's what they've needed to tell us, that it's a mirage. But it's not a mirage. It's completely different than a mirage. Now, sometimes people will say, oh, well, these buildings are stretched, therefore it's a mirage. No, they're stretched because you're looking through atmosphere. It'd be the same thing if you looked at a plane in heat, you see the kind of waviness of it. Well, maybe the top of the plane is a little bit stretched. That's all that's happening. It's not a mirage. You're not seeing something, upside down. You're not seeing something reflected in front of you. So, let me see if there's any last images here. And it does change, because the situation changes as far as, where's the person standing. And also, what is this one? Kind of looks crazy. Chicago from St. Joseph, Michigan. Photo taken. Oh, so Nowitzki's still out there taking pictures, I guess. Let me see what's going on with this guy. Joshua Nowitzki's the guy that took the original images. And I don't know what that is. That's supposed to be Chicago? Alrighty then. So it does, according to this, it is 60 miles. St. Joseph, Michigan to Chicago, 60 miles. And that Nowitzki's still taking those images. And again, if you just do the 60 miles and put that into the curvature calculator, then you shouldn't be able to see any of those buildings at all. I don't know if he's on the shore. Let's say he's at 50 feet, because I'm just guessing here. I don't know. And we're looking 60 miles. So your feet should be 1757. And if you then go and look up the height of the Sears Tower, then we'll get 1729 to the tip. So you shouldn't see anything, right? What did we come up with this number here? 1757 to 1729. Yeah, so we shouldn't see a thing. You should not be able to see any of Chicago ever. And yet we do see it, and then people say, yeah, but there's half the buildings are covered with water. And again, that's what I'm trying to bring up and talk about here, is that what you're seeing is not half the buildings covered by water, or else then you have to say that there's a hump of water between you and those buildings, which I showed, hopefully you remember this, with the idea of the curvature here. Wake up, pen. That these two people are not, there's no curvature there's no hump of water in between them. That they are looking parallel to the tangent, which means from this person it's falling away, from this person it's falling away, in which case what they're saying simply doesn't make sense anymore, that there cannot be a hump of water between us. So the fact that it looks like there's one, well, then you have to research that, and that's what you'll find out, is that it is an atmospheric lensing. I think that somebody would be able to do a good test to prove this you could do it easily with a magnifying glass in some sort of a pool or big body of water. Not big, but manageable, house manageable. But the problem with that would be that nobody's going to believe it because you're using a magnifying glass. So they're going to say, well, there's no magnifying glass in reality. So what you would need to show is the lensing that happens. I mean, the crazy thing is your evidence is right here. This is what exactly is happening. And so, I don't know how you'd show it other than saying, well, this is what's going on here. And I think Rob Skiba's video is awesome because he also shows the heights of the buildings are affected by the same thing. He calls it lensing, which is what it is. And it is causing magnification of everything behind it, including the buildings and the water. So, and we do see, when I say this isn't a mirage, that you can see reflection here. In fact, is this one that's got, well, maybe not. Well, a little of this might be reflection, but it's in front of it. Okay, so again, that has nothing to do with the fact of anything being brought up over the curvature. So, let's see if we've got questions in the chat, and then I'll shut it down because I think that's all I wanted to talk about. And if anybody's got any questions about what I talked about at first with the Kanagawa, and there's so many different observations that I guarantee are all over the world that people just haven't thought about before. So wherever you're at, go to Google Earth and look around at what you might be able to see. Remember, you can see further the higher you are. So that's a good start, is to elevate yourself a little bit. And then from there, look for somewhere, start small. Look at 50, 60, 70 miles and see what you can see. Because I think that's probably the best way to show it to an everyday person, that they don't live where they were taught, and that you don't live on a ball. There's until somebody can show me gravity pulling anything to the center of anything, I don't think that is something that's considered scientific. It's how do you falsify the idea of gravity? And if you guys haven't checked out the video that Bob mirrored on GLOBEBUSTERS channel, very good video, and towards the end it gets real interesting when he's talking about our phones. And I haven't had a chance to look at the app I just downloaded. I'll look at it real quick. But if you get a app that allows you to recalibrate, okay, so basically, let's say you turned on the app and for some reason the idea of level is a little bit off. Well, you can hit calibrate. You lay it on the desk, you hit calibrate, and then it resets itself to a 0 point. Okay, so if I was to fly from here to, I don't know, let's say I went to Greenland. Well, if I set my phone, if I recalibrate it as I get on the plane, I recalibrate it, it's set to my local place. Well, when I get to my destination, then the phone should be off. It should be off kilter because I just changed my relative position versus where I was at the beginning. Now, of course, it wouldn't change. The reason for that, because you're still level with where you were. But that's a very interesting development because it's going to kind of put the globe believers into a little bit of a conundrum, which they've already been in several, and they'll just wiggle out of it, I'm sure. But so I'm just looking at my app right now, and if I'm tilting it almost 45 degrees, and I'm going to hit calibrate here. Okay, so now I've got my phone tilted 45 degrees, and I hit calibrate, and now it's showing level, but I'm 45 degrees. So I'm not level. So if you calibrated it like this, and then you took off in your plane and went somewhere across the world or wherever, that you would then see the effects of what you did. But if you didn't, then I think we might all have a device in our own hands that can prove the Earth to be exactly as it's presented to us, and that is a stationary, non-moving, non-inertial. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's one day. I lost my train of thought. Let me check the chat here now. Okay, so ask me if you got any questions. Please put question and then let me know. Yeah, I'm going to end pretty soon. Yep, after I answer anything. I have an IQ of 165 and I'm a flat earther. Sweet. Jaren, you are not displaying. What was I supposed to? Oh. Not displaying anything? Or I'm just displaying my blue screen. Oh yeah, I can't show you my phone. I don't think. Oh. No, that won't work. I'd have to download it on the iPad now. Let's see here. Question: can you see a bullet fired from a gun? A bullet travels at 2,000 miles per hour. The ISS is said to travel at 17,000 miles per hour. Yeah, I mean that's huge. I've talked about that before. I mean the idea of moving that fast is crazy that we ever bought into that. I mean, look into things like the plane X-14 and those planes that went. I forgot how high exactly they went, but they had to the joints and every piece of metal expanded like multiple feet. I almost want to say it's like 3 or 4 feet. So imagine building something and you have to allow for even the sections that are carrying the fuel are going to shrink or expand by 3 feet. I mean, you can't build a rocket that allows that, yet we're supposed to believe that that's what they are. Let's see here. So anybody have any questions about anything that I talked about? Shadows in the moon craters. Yeah, I don't know. Can't really say what the moon is. Don't know. Bullets travel at many different speeds. Yeah, but for the most part, they don't go faster than 2,000. Oops, I just saw it. Gosh, it's moving too fast. Question: are you going to the Flat Earth show in July? Not planning on it. No, I don't have travel funds, and we got to save up for North Carolina still. Question: can you? Oops, sorry. I'm scrolling back up to see if I missed any here. It's actually good. I didn't know if anybody puts my name in there, then it highlights it orange. How's the Titanic video coming along? Good. Should be coming up soon. But it will be a good one, so stay tuned for that one. Did Joe Rogan really bring y'all here? Why would Joe Rogan bring people here? What does that mean? Somebody explain that one? Okay, I don't see anything else here. Okay, Bill Nye is Hitler's bastard rape child. Alrighty. Heliosexual, gay for flat earth. Okay. Hey Bob, Bob's here. What's up, Bob? I don't think he's a closet flat earther. That I don't think. Seriously, does anyone have a college degree in here? Okay, so what you need to understand, Mr. Inhumane Nation, is that would be a detriment to what we're trying to accomplish. If we're trying to say that you were lied to in the educational centers as part of an indoctrination program to make you believe you live somewhere you don't, well, the more people who are college educated, the bigger problem it would be to realize the deception. That's what they're teaching, is that the deception itself is the truth. So you should be happy that we don't all have degrees, or else we'd all be like Bill Nye and think we know everything. And if that is the case, that the Earth's a ball, well, then that's what we will figure out in this inquiry. However, after 2 years, I got to tell you that I've never seen something lacking evidence as much as the globe, especially something taught to second graders. Let's see here. $5 to anyone here with a degree. I'll take back my empties if there's more than 5 of you. Don't know what that means. Again, a degree is a great thing if you want to be well indoctrinated in whatever it is that you have studied. Now, again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Sometimes it's a great thing. You can have degrees in great things. But in my opinion, if you've got a degree in astronomy, well, I hate to tell you that I'm not positive that what's in those books is anywhere near the truth. Let's see here. Looking if there's any other questions. Okay, there. What's the curvature? Is that a question? I don't know if that's a question. 8 inches per mile squared up to 100 miles or something. After that, I don't think you can use that same equation, which still makes no sense to me. I've given up on that line because people wouldn't see what I'm saying, but I'll just say it again. a sphere or a circle is constant curvature. So to me, if you lined up 25,000 people a mile apart from each other around the globe, there should be a number that each person would measure between them and the next person. And it has to be consistent. It has to be the same. Because, and I'm not saying that the Earth is a perfect sphere. Let's just pretend that it's perfect. Perfect sphere. And you've got 25,000 people lined up a mile apart from each other, which would stretch the entire equator. Then what would be the curvature between each of them? Well, nobody will answer that question. They just tell me, sorry, you can't do it that way. The math doesn't work that way. It's exponential growth. You need to do the 8 inches per mile squared, which makes no sense because each person, if you have person 1, they measure to person 2. What is that number? Because that number has to be the same as person 2 measuring to person 3, and then person 3 to person 4. I understand if you go person 1 to 2, and then from 1 to 3, and from 1 to 4, that is an exponential growth. That would be 8 inches times that distance squared. But if you're just talking about what is the distance between each, or what is the curvature between each person, well, that sounds like with the 8 inches per mile squared that every person would measure 8 inches. And in which case, if you take 8 inches times 24,901, it comes out to less than 3.5 miles. So you're telling me on a 24,901 mile ball, you can go all the way around it, come back and hit yourself in the back of the head for in just 3 miles of curvature. Doesn't sound right at all. I'm checking here to see, make sure I get to the bottom of this. Jaron, okay, I read that one. Oh, Jaron, if you want to shut it down, okay. Yeah, if somebody wants to start a hangout, send you all there. I'm not really discussing any particular window. If somebody thinks that I should be showing something here, I'll do this for you because this is fun. Let's go with this one. Oops, there you go. You can watch that now. Let's see here. Vincent P. said he'll do something today. Don't know what that is. College degree is a high level of indoctrination. Absolutely. Let's see here. Excellent video on GLOBEBUSTERS. Yeah, I think it's great too. I had to watch it a few times. Hey, James Collins, when you make claims like that, why don't you explain yourself? Just says, Jism, you're a liar. Yeah, I'm just lying. Just telling lies every day. That's what I do. It's the best way to get people to watch you and to hang out with you. Just tell lies. Let's see here. Is there anything else? GLOBEBUSTERS should be 8 hours long. No, I don't think so. If you go to the Painted Desert in Arizona, you can see San Francisco. I don't know about that. When you follow the path of a compass north and past the North Pole, does the compass switch to south? Well, you tell me. I don't think they let anybody get near the North Pole, so I don't think anybody knows. But yeah, there should be some huge issue there. It just should flip out, or yeah, I'm not sure about that. Never been there. Let's see here. You can't confuse a ball and a plane unless you are totally obliterated with cognitive dissonance. It's probably pretty true, whether or not you're a globe believer or a flat earth believer. The moon and sun are above us in circle rotation. Where is it tonight? What? If moon, sun are above us in a circle rotation, where is it tonight? California. Well, the sun would be above Russia and above Asia. If it's night in California. Is that what you're asking? I don't know. That's what it looks like. And as far as the moon, I don't know. You know where the moon is? Do you know where the moon is?
Do I know where the moon is?
Yeah, I didn't know if you knew where the moon was.
Right now, you mean? Oh, sorry. I didn't know.
I don't know where the moon is myself. Let's see here. Moon.
Right now,
I don't know. The moon is...
full moon. Next moon rises today at 2 a.m.
So the moon rises for me at 2 a.m. So it's like an hour and a half. So it's probably above Africa or above the Atlantic right now. That's my guess. Let's see here. What else we got here? Tesla. Okay. No compass point south. Yeah, that's true. Nope, they all point north. Infinite Plane Society was here. I didn't know that. God, you don't quit, do you? Let's see here. Great idea, by the way, on the Starbucks thing. I think that's awesome. Any other questions? If Jaren is ending, who's doing the next hangout? Probably IPS will start one up again. Let's see here. Brian has an experiment for Flat Earth where's the page has any donated. I'm not sure. I keep seeing people say I'm not presenting. I don't know what they mean by that. What do you mean I'm not presenting? I'm not showing anything. I'm just reading the chat, if that's what you're saying. Let's see here. I see a lot of things about Bob Billings. I agree with you. Definitely agree with you. P-Brain shows perspective. Yeah, he does a great job. In fact, one of the things that I had the hardest time with was the angular size of the sun. It was actually one of the, kind of the last hurdles that was just didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand how the sun doesn't. We do see some images of it looking like it gets a little bit smaller, but it definitely looks like it's the glare that's getting smaller when you put a filter on the sun. It doesn't change, but a few arc minutes, very little. And that was an issue until P-Brain did his video where he showed that items that are far removed from the initial viewer, he does a test with two 4-inch wiffle balls where he puts one 6 feet further than the other and puts the camera on the ground, and clearly there's like a 10-to-1 difference, meaning the wiffle ball that's closest to the camera looks very large and the one that's 6 feet away from it looks like 1/10 of the size. Then what he does is he stands up and puts the camera up high, about his height, so 6 feet above the closer wiffle ball, and all of a sudden there's no difference, or it's very small difference, between it and the ball that was 6 feet away from it. So what that tells us is that because the sun has already removed itself from us, it's not like it's on the ground and then it leaves. In that case it would get much smaller, but it's already reduced its angular size because it's at a certain distance above us. I don't know what that distance is, but it's already had its angular size change, so when it's going away from us, it's a very small change, probably not noticeable. And P-Brain does a great example and shows that. So definitely check that out. Let's see here. And shadows in the moon craters, I think I already said that. Are you going to the Flat Earth show? Okay, so now I'm getting these ones I already checked. Are you going to the Flat Earth show in July? Maybe IPS is going to fly me out there. I don't know. Yeah, I think so too. I did not kill Bill Nye. That's not true. Yeah, I think IPS and I just we could talk for hours because we both kind of have the same, close to the same beliefs or the same understandings, or our research has led us to the same conclusions about some of these organizations out there and what their intent was and what they've done with humanity with simple tactics of basic mind control, really. Free coffee for flat earthers. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great idea. Did I hear you say that somebody had the SWAT team called on them or something? I don't know if that was you were being serious or I was listening to you right before I went live. Kevin Spangler, that's sounds like a personal problem there. Thanks, Jay Johnson. That's a nice rhyme there. So the moon isn't far. No, I don't think it can be. I mean, just think about everyone going crazy because I'm showing a distance of 162 miles and people are saying the furthest a camera can see is 30 miles. How dare you say that you can see 160 miles? Yet you can zoom in on the moon 248,000 miles away. Yeah, I don't think the moon is far at all. See here. How did you explain the clockwise spinning of the sky in the southern hemisphere? Well, it's pretty easy if you just turn around, for one. I mean, if you look at the North Star and see stars going counterclockwise, if you just follow yourself to the right, turn to the right, the stars still move the same way from east to west. So they're going to go up the wall as you turn around, and then when you're looking south, they'd be coming from your left, going up and over, which would be a clockwise formation. So the only thing left with the southern stars really comes down to that area of the southern sky. Is it stationary, or does it move slightly throughout the evening? Because you always hear people say one of the big globe things right now is, well, how do these three locations all see the southern star at the same time? Which they never do, because how could it be night for each of those three locations at the same time? So that's not a proper argument. But granted, I do see that is the problem with the azimuthal equidistant map for the most part, is if the southern point is a stationary point, which is not a stationary star, but let's say that little empty spot never moves, well then yes, that's why we say that the azimuthal equidistant map probably has some needed corrections, and it could be just kind of bending things down so that those three locations are looking south. But if you do some research into magnetic declination, it is shocking how much they turn people around down south. In fact, I don't remember which episode of GLOBEBUSTERS it is. I might be able to bring this up real quick. But there's places in Antarctica that they tell you to turn 180 degrees around. This is where I'm not smart enough to kind of battle some of these things. We need somebody who's real fluent in math, because I think basically you could use the magnetic declination to map the Earth, because wherever you're at, they tell you you have to add or subtract a certain amount of degrees to face north. And they say that because magnetic north is not the same place as geographic north. But why is there then some 180 degree turns? Let me see if I can find the map just to show you that real quick, because that's, if somebody's got a degree in you know, mathematics or whatever it would take to, I tried to figure it out, and it just gets so bad. You're like, wow, this is really messed up. Let's see, is this going to come up here? Okay, so for instance, here in Santa Cruz, which is north of me, the declination is positive 13 degrees. So that means if you took your compass out and you found out where north was on the compass, that you'd then have to add 13 degrees positive, which is to the east or to the right, to point yourself at the North Pole. Okay, so that's, or the magnetic north. So as we start moving around here, you'll see everything kind of stays. Let me zoom out of here and you'll see the problem. So you can kind of see if somebody in Australia and somebody in South America and somebody in South Africa, if the problem that we're having with the flat Earth map is that each of these people looks south and sees the same stationary point, well, are they looking in the same spot? Well, let's see. When we move this here, this person is 11 degrees east, that they would have to take their compass, turn 11 degrees positive east. Okay, so let's go to South Africa. So this person is moving 17 degrees east. So now just imagine that now you've got two people using a compass, and the compasses are both telling you where south is, but both people would have to turn a difference of 6 degrees to face that same, technically the same location. Well, now look at this. So, I mean, this is what I mean. This is the answers right here. How can this right here, Madagascar, be magnetic declination of negative 19 degrees west, but right here next to it is, oh, I thought that I just said, oh, this is a negative and the other one wasn't? Hold on a second. Sorry, I need to go back and see what I did over here. Was this negative? No, it's positive east. Okay, so you have to turn 7 degrees there to the east. But then right here, oh yeah, so way different. So I mean, you're talking about these two people are looking nowhere near the same place when they look south. So, you know, that's a problem. That doesn't equate well for the globe. Is it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that big of a difference that, you know, somebody here is, look at these differences. So this person's a +4. Okay, so they've got to turn 4 degrees to the east, yet this person right here is 15 degrees west. What is going on? This is, yeah, see, if somebody, this is a Dr. Zach job, because that's just, they can't be that way. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. How can that be plus 10 and you go up here and it's going to be something negative 20? I mean, that's where, you know, people were laughing at Antonio Subarat's map where he had turned South America and completely almost wrapped it underneath North America, and people were laughing like crazy. Well, this is why. Because it's not true that it's set up this way. If otherwise, how could these two people have to turn so different? If we're just talking about the North Pole up here, how could one person have to turn completely 22 degrees to the west when this person right here is only 5 and this person down here is 4 to the east? That just doesn't make sense to me. And again, Madagascar over here was 16 degrees negative to the west. Mozambique, 9 degrees negative to the west. 11 degrees negative. So let me show you what I was talking about down here in Antarctica. And this one is where you'll just be like, well, okay, then screw it. Well, this makes no sense. Down here in Antarctica, 108 degrees to the west. So imagine if you're standing right here in Antarctica, you've got to take your compass. It tells you where north is. Sorry, you have to turn 108 degrees. That's more than a quarter turn. So you're facing where the compass tells you is north, and you've got to turn, if you're facing 12 o'clock on a clock, you've got to turn to like 4 o'clock. So if anybody thinks that that's just normal, that, well, then they don't understand the deception. Here's 124 degrees west. 159 degrees west. 180 degrees means you turned around. You're looking north and you turned around and face south. If you don't think that that's where this is all hidden, well then it's right there. It's all in the magnetic declination that'll tell us where everything is. Look at that. This went from, okay, right here in Antarctica. Okay, so look where I'm at. It's a negative 162 west, but right here next to it, positive 146 east. God, I wish I wasn't so stupid. Well, I mean, it's just the answers are right here. It's just we need somebody smart enough to figure that out. I can't figure that out. How can one location next to each other in Antarctica, one time you have to turn, almost completely turn around to look the other direction, and then next to it in Antarctica, you have to turn the other direction all the way around. That's where it all lies. The deception is right there.
The time zones in Antarctica are so
Oh boy, that's the big one. So, where is Dr. Zach?
time zones in Antarctica too. Look at those.
Yeah, yeah, because I think that they're spread out. I think it's the outer. It would only make sense if it's the outer rim. Then you would need to. You might be where we think is next to each other, because this is what it's looking like. They're next to each other on the globe map, but maybe they're on opposite ends of the Earth. In which case you would be turning. Whoops! I have to turn all the way over there, and there is no. Planes don't even fly with a compass down south. As soon as they pass the southern circle, they use a grid map, because, well, obviously because we're being deceived. Let me check if there's any final things. And what does elevation have to do with bringing the sun back into view from the horizon? Does elevation matter with a telescope? I don't think it does. Well, if the sun set behind a mountain, then elevation would matter, because you're not going to be able to bring it back over the mountain. So I don't really know what that means. Keep going. Jaron, keep fighting the good fight. Trying, doing the best I can. Somebody said something about Ouija boards. I would not mess with those. Pull a map with the magnetic lines shown. You mean like the, I think I know what you're talking about. So you mean yeah, I know what you're talking about. Magnetic, they're like magnetic ley lines, right? Magnetic map, I don't know what they're called. But I know which one you're talking about. What? Magnetic map. Hey, has anyone seen that cool device? It's called Time. It's a clock that's just a piece of wood with a orbiting magnetic ball. It's really cool. I don't think this is what I'm looking for. Let me see. Images. I forgot what it's called. Yeah, this one here. So this one I think is Antonio's talking about. This is the magnetic declination map. And you know, I think it was Cathexis and I. Yeah, I think it was. We spent 2 hours one night. We had taken this and done Cartesian to polar, which wraps it like the flat Earth map, and it made no sense because this point here, when you wrap this, think of where Australia and New Zealand ends up. So it's way on the outskirts. So it was telling us to turn 180 degrees positive east. And when we did that, we were facing the ice wall. It didn't make any sense. We couldn't rationalize it. IPS, nice video, displayed truth in plain sight. Past Antarctica's home. Yeah, I think that they've trapped us with the longitude, latitude, and yeah, it's just a deception. I don't know what it means. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense if all there is the ice wall and that's it. Then I don't really see the reason. Well, I guess I can kind of see the reason for the deception, but really, if you think about the idea of there being even more, which I don't like to push because there maybe not, and I think there's plenty of goodness and space for everyone here. So it's kind of a pipe dream to think, oh, there could be something that then you're kind of falling into the whole idea of, well, we want to colonize Mars and we want to colonize, what we have is enough. When we've perfected this place, well, then maybe we can look outside that. But it does lead me to start thinking about, if there was, then it makes even more sense when you're asking the question of why would they hide it, or what are they hiding. Because imagine, let's just say there was a couple other continents out that were further evolved and didn't enslave their people and didn't indoctrinate them with false beliefs. Well, maybe those people are happy and are contributing to a kind of beneficial lifestyle for everyone, and then you've got people who want slaves. So we just happen to be the ones that unfortunately were born into the slavehood. And they certainly wouldn't want to tell you, because as soon as you knew, then you would probably come back and tell other people, and before you know it, there's no slaves. So, see, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. How much further do I have to go? I think there's land outside the ice wall. Yeah, I can't say there's not. That story, Iron Republic, yeah, was really good. Really seemed like it was the truth. Good going, bro. You are awesome. Thank you, thank you. Seeing if there's anything else here. Starbucks idea is great. The magnetic fields are SS truth. Yeah, I don't know if anybody knows anybody that, because I think you could map the Earth with just those declination points, although I think that's a little cocky to say, because they obviously wouldn't make it that easy. Although I think it's as easy also as getting the code to GPS. So, I mean, I don't think that's cocky to say. I think that if somebody were ever to decrypt the code, well, the code would tell you where you are. They would tell you the algorithm or the formula for, if you are at XY coordinate, return XYZ on the globe. Well, if you knew what that formula was, you could just reverse engineer everybody's location and come out with their real location, and boom, the Earth would be mapped. But magnetic declination, I'm not sure, because it depends. How much do you trust the idea of the magnetics? I don't even think I've ever been explained it well enough to say that it is. I would even bank anything on it. It doesn't make any sense that a ball Earth would have a bar magnet running through the middle of it. Is that what we're supposed to believe, or is it a central magnet, which is a liquid core, which liquid metal isn't magnetized? It can't be. So, I mean, to me, I don't even understand. And how is there a North Pole and a South Pole that move separate from each other? Like, one is randomly moving, the North Pole is randomly moving towards the southeast, yet the one at the South Pole is moving like northeast. Well, I don't know any magnets that have unequal balance like that. So, I mean, the whole thing just kind of is a crapshoot. Let's see here, 1047. Okay, can't figure out. Plenty of groups doing sun moon readings, but something is. Yeah, because I don't think that that's going to get it done. I mean, I think it's good that they've all tried it, but although I think they did discover some things. I think, if I remember right from Nathan Oakley's one, it certainly seems like New Zealand and Australia are a little closer to the United States than we're told, at least based on sunrise time. Infinite Plane Society. Hi, everyone. I saw an old army map. Oh, I want to read that. Where'd it go? Shoot. I just lost where I was. I live in the southern hemisphere. Is there anything you think I should be looking for? Yeah, I've been asking just for somebody to videotape even like 3 hours of the southern star rotation. Just set up your camera and put it on record, or if you get a GoPro, you can. There's some nice time-lapse functions. But then also I'd like to know where the southern point is compared to what your compass says. And everybody's got to be careful too with your compasses, because at the equinox, when I measured where 90 degrees was, it was 11 degrees different than my phone. So we have a regular compass, it's, you know, a real compass, and then I've got my phone compass. And we have to remember that it would be very easy for them to implement anything they want in the iPhone compass. And the fact that it was 11 degrees, at first I was like, no big deal, 11 degrees. But the more I kept thinking about it, I said, you know, that's a pretty significant change if the compass I'm holding should really be pulling to the magnetic North Pole, right? So why would my phone be 11 degrees different than that? Definitely something there. But yeah, if you could get that, that'd be great. Is Jaron a domer? I am not. No, I think that the sky is flat. I don't know. I don't think there's glass up there, so no, can't be called a domer. Tell me what you know about this. Who are you? I don't know if you're talking to me. Let's see here. What's up with you tonight? Flat Earth to come pick up your flat books. What? Why not? I'm a great learner. Debt is the most insidious form. That's true. Yeah, the money situation is terrible. Anyone ever pass powerful magnets over your skull? Felt like I was to pass out. No, but I've heard Ken Wheeler talk about that magnet he has gives him headaches. Maybe there's no ice wall, and Antarctica is a lot bigger but still a continent. Maybe there's just lots more water. Yeah, I've thought about that before, because I did follow the Vendée Globe boat race this year, and there's another one, the Antarctic Cup. But both of them went the amount of miles that you know, it's kind of borderline. You'd think if 25,000 miles is the equator, and these guys are racing at the bottom southern hemisphere, they're getting nowhere near the South Pole. Obviously, they're not even getting close to Antarctica. So the place that they should be going, it should be like 19,000 miles, but they went like 35,000. And it's one of those situations too where it's hard to tell their exact speed, because you're taking current into account, and again, what are you measuring by? That's where the problem becomes too, with people saying about the planes, is planes can only measure their speed through a pitot tube or for ground tracking. Well, if GPS is screwed up, if they've changed the GPS, well, then you're SOL, because how are you going to prove that? How are you going to say? You really can't. So that's what sucks about that. Same thing with the for instance, if the GPS tells us the bottom is 19,000 miles, and then they do the math and they come out with how fast these boats were going and how far they traveled, well, it doesn't mean that has to be how far they traveled. It's just on the layout that they were given, the layout that we believe in, you know, or we've been taught, that's how far they traveled on that particular racetrack. Again, it doesn't mean that that's what the racetrack looks like. Okay, getting anywhere else here. Everything we hear in the news, they are coding numbers into everything. Old mystery, mysticism, religion, the coding of numbers. Yeah, it's everywhere. Black hole sun dude just died. Psyop. Okay, don't know what that means either. Yeah, I've heard that a few times from people recently, though, that the sun is dying and that's what they're hiding, but who knows. Do you believe in the firmament? I'm not really sure what that means. Yeah, well, you talking about the place where stars are? Then yes. And I think it's flat. It certainly looks flat and acts flat. So, you know, it gives us the appearance of a dome, I guess. But that's just because as you look off into the distance, you are looking through more atmosphere again, which is going to cause things to bend towards the horizon, which can give you the idea of a sphere. But doesn't mean it's true. The last flight I took, I brought a compass and my iPhone was 15 to 20 degrees off. Yeah, see, that's a problem. Not really sure what it tells us. Now, that's interesting that I wonder if trying to think if there's anybody I know that's close. Yeah, that might be something we could do, is just take a bunch of people. Although you'd think the iPhones have to be all set to the same, so I don't think you'd actually learn anything that way, because it would all be off equal amounts. Although it could change based on your location. So for instance, if I'm 11 degrees off here, maybe somebody, you know, south of me is 12 degrees off, and then somebody further south, and that might tell us something. Thing that sucks is that they know all this stuff. We shouldn't even have to play guessing games. Let's see here. The lie is almost done. I just worry about what they're going to do. Yeah, well, I don't think that they need us. I mean, I do think they need us, so I don't think there's much to worry about. But you're right. They're not going to go out with grace and just say, okay, you guys, you found us out. Let's all get along. Probably not the way it's going to go down. Somebody pull the beer right back. I got to go take a Joe Rogan. That's good. Seeing if there's any last one. No flat tax or oops. Jaron, what can we do in our community to make Flat Earth mainstream besides YouTube videos? Well, you really don't want to hear my idea, but no. I mean, let's just pretend, and we won't even use me here. We'll use Flat Earth Asshole and IPS. Okay, so let's say that we all, at this point, trusted those two people. Well, if we were to get everyone who's subscribed to them to donate just $1 a month, $1, and combined they have, you know, say 50,000 subs or whatever, that's $50,000 a month. And if you think of it that way, think of everything that those two people could do. They could go down to Antarctica, film the 24-hour sun, find out if there is one. They could take trips basically anywhere. I mean, that's enough money that you're not really going to run out no matter what you want to do for that month. Whatever experiment you want to do. So, I mean, I look at it that way that I don't think there's a lot that can really be... Unless, I mean, the reason I think that pushing it is a good idea is because I think somebody out there has money. So when we're talking about that's $50,000 a month, well, some people have billions of dollars. So what different, you know, $50,000 a day is, or a month is nothing for somebody who has billions of dollars. So that's why I think it's good to keep pushing this stuff out there, because, you know, you got to keep the hope alive that somebody, and it sucks that we have to depend on money, but that's the life that we live. You're not going to get a boat. You're not going to get a plane. You're not going to be able to test something with a ring laser gyro. You're not going to do some of these tests that I think can be done, you know, high altitude balloon flights to where you've got a couple different objectives and you've got a couple different cameras, but when you're talking about $50,000, then you can have the best equipment, the best balloon, the best tracking, and still have $50,000 coming the following month. I mean, I think that's, and to just think that everyone that's in this, you know, re-examining the things that we were taught, if you're talking about they each have to lose $1 a month, I mean, that's something that should be easy. And I understand why people, you know, are weary of it. It's just at some point we've got to all, and I don't know if it's you know, creating a society or whatever. I don't know what it is, but if there was like a Flat Earth Research Society that was made up of people that people trusted, and I know that's hard. That's the thing that sucks, is that when you get to this point in your truth seeking, well, you've realized that everyone has lied to you, and I'm in the same boat. You know, that's what got me to Flat Earth, is realizing that I was taught lies about everything. And at that point, it made it easier to say, all right, screw everything. I'm not going to believe in anybody anymore. I'm not going to trust anybody. It's just going to be about my wife and I and what we can research and what we can find for ourselves. And that's so much of a better feeling. And really, we never got to the place where we're like, okay, now we need to go back to trusting people. But we never got to the place where we didn't trust people. We're just at a place where if we hear something, we go and research it and we verify it. So, you know, I was the first one that admitted my mistake. Is there was a GLOBEBUSTERS show where I said Tesla said that the Earth was the Earth was a realm, and immediately after that, now I get this feeling in me that I'm like, I've never actually seen that quote. Let me go make sure I find it. And I looked and looked and looked and looked and looked for like a whole night and just said, son of a buck, that's what happens when you trust other people, because I had read it somewhere and said, what a great quote, and put it away in my memory bank. And, you know, I hate to say things like that when you have to go back and correct yourself and say, guys, be careful. That's the kind of thing that, and that's my own fault. And that's kind of the way I look at it. Is if you do make mistakes or you do trust somebody, well, then you only have yourself to blame. Like, I don't blame the person who originally said that quote, because it was my job to check it, not their job to. I mean, yeah, granted, I could say, oh, it's their job to tell me the truth, but then you're living in fantasy land if you think people are just going to do nothing but tell you the truth. So you have to verify everything. That's why I say do your own research. And maybe the person researching thought that they saw it in a book or didn't know they were making a mistake. It doesn't have to always be a nefarious reason, but we do need to at some point put some trust in people. And if it's something like $1 a month, well, then maybe it's not, people aren't getting bent out of shape over it. It's not like we're saying, okay, give somebody $100. No, that's crazy. But when you're talking about something that can move this forward, yeah, I think it has to come from some sort of funding. If somebody's a big Christian, go talk to the owner of Hobby World, right? Those guys got billions. So if they cared a lot about the Bible like they say they do, or Chick-fil-A or those places, it'd be great if they could fund something. That money to them is absolutely nothing when you're talking about a billionaire. Think of how easy it is to come up with 50. That's what, 600,000 a year. Yeah, that's nothing for them. We need to start from scratch with no globalists, no Masons, and no Jesuits. Yeah, that would be nice if we could do that. Unfortunately, every one of your public education systems are basically set up by one of those. So, how do the stars work and spin on a flat firmament? There are long exposure star trails around the South Pole as well. Yeah, I've seen them, but I've also seen them faking them and then playing them in reverse from the north and calling it the south. And I've seen footage where that southern point moves. Now, again, I can't prove that that's what was happening. Maybe the camera was moving, but I don't know. I don't live down there. As far as how they work, spin on a flat firmament, just picture a huge disc above the flat Earth that's spinning. Now, again, this is something we're trying to model. We actually did it tonight. We were doing a little bit of it. That's a brain twister, because if you think about it, it's not that hard to imagine that if you've got stars rising and setting in your bubble, in your little snow globe of an existence, and I say that because if you went outside, the stars will give you the appearance like you're in a snow globe. Even if it was a flat sky, that's the way it's going to render itself to you, because you're looking through more atmosphere in the distance, and that curves it to the horizon. So now picture that dome piece, and if stars are rising on your left and setting on your right, then wouldn't that create a spot in your particular dome, in your particular snow globe, that remains fixed? But the stars are still rising and setting. And so for each area, so let's say somebody's in Australia, they look up, see the stars rising and setting, which would be moving in a clockwise motion, but they would be going around a center point. Now, if that center point was a star, that's something different. Then you have to say, oh, well, then there's a southern pole star. But the fact that there's not a southern pole star, that it's a empty space, would be the outcome if the stars rising and setting were moving around a stationary point from your perspective. Again, that's the thing, is that to each person it would be different. It would render different. But I've already all but proved that to myself, that is what we see when you look at the sun. When you look at reflections is the best example of that. Again, line up 100 people on the beach, 100 feet from each other, and it's a sunset. Every one of those people is going to see a reflection coming from the sun to their feet. Yet nobody out of those 100 people can see each other's reflection. So that means that reflections are person specific, in which case if the sun is just a reflection of the actual sun above it or above the atmosphere, and what you're seeing is a rendered apparent sun through the atmosphere, then it would be rendered like a reflection, different for each observer. So it's all just more research, more studies to get to the bottom of it, and we'll get there. Just moving slowly. Does Bill Nye have any kids? He does. He has a daughter, and he was married to a Christian.
And he was married by not Joel Osteen, but
And he was married by a pretty famous
by the guy that
Warren.
writes A Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren.
Rick Warren. He was married by Rick Warren, Christian, and the divorced though.
Divorced.
Yeah, now he's divorced.
He divorced like a month later.
Yeah, it was like a quick marriage, like maybe a month or a year or something. I don't remember.
It's a weird story, actually.
Bill Nye Liar Guy show. I call it Bill Nye Wrecks the World. Let's see here. We all need to start from scratch. I read that one. Up 10.7%. Don't know what that means. Jaren, what can we do in our community? I already read that. Jaren, have you looked into augmented reality, virtual reality? Do you see the latest Falcon 9? Yeah, that latest Falcon 9 failure video. Why? I don't know. No, maybe I didn't. I just saw their latest launch, which is terrible. Commander Graham Bethune navigated flying his planes by the stars. Why do I know that name? Commander Graham Bethune? Sounds familiar. I don't know. I probably read it at some point. I saw your buddies made a video on you because being a shill because we can't see past 30 miles. Yeah, I saw that too. It's exciting. Quality people over there in the Yahushahu camp. We live on a cross shill confirmed. Alrighty. How Dubay is crazy. This is nonsense. Okay. Anybody questions? Anybody questions before I shut this down? Project the globe on a cube and unfold it. Project the... Why would you project it on a cube? I don't think that's possible. Okay. And Androcka's Globebusters is, in other words, he is probably gay. Okay. Jaren, what do you think about the southern flights? Do you think they catch jet streams to speed up the aircraft? Yeah, absolutely. If so, wouldn't that only work in one direction? Well, not if they're flying at different heights. At 32 or 35,000 feet, the winds are predominantly east to west. Sorry, west to east, making that flight from New Zealand to Chile very fast. Like the winds would get up to like 200 miles per hour, 250. And then going back, if you're above 40,000, then the winds go that way. Have you looked at more cruises in the southern hemisphere? We haven't been able to find one. There's only cruises that go like world cruises. So they go up, they'll hit New Zealand, then go up by the Philippines, then around by Alaska, back down. But no, there's no... And I guess it makes sense too. Always, there's that out. It makes sense that I don't think it would be very smart to have a cruise ship out in the Southern Ocean going from New Zealand to South America anyway, because you're nowhere near any land if anything were to happen. And but I still think they have every kind of cruise there is. So they would have that cruise just because some people would want to be out at the water gambling or something. Jaren, you so eager to shut down the chat, but what about NASA? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that is true. I think Daryl Fox is the one who said that quote. Yep. Is it possible we don't account for the other plane we live alongside of? It really is a parallel dimension. Yeah, I kind of do have that same. I don't like the idea of dimensions, but I don't know, different densities or yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that at all. How long will this so-called secret be kept for? We have so many movies and proofs that show you clearly we are inside of some sort of dome. Yeah, there's a lot of pop culture references to it. I don't think it can be kept much longer, but I say that, and I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it was 50 years. I mean, I would love to make it 50 days, and we'll try that, but it will eventually come out. Eventually, people will realize you don't travel to space. I mean, how long... We should already realize this. We should have everybody in the world who has woken up to this deception and just say, hey, time out here. Just seems like a little interesting that you guys are the only ones that can go there. You went to the moon 50 years ago and never went back. That is something that as a human race we should have already realized. You shouldn't have to be making video after video after video showing people that NASA is a fraud for them to get it. Let's see here. Put some fake satellites NASA live stream to help push this thing. Oh, I should have done something like that. I'm sorry I didn't have anything like that on. We'll go look at the ISS live real quick. That's always a fun thing to do. Ustream. What time is it? Oh god, it's 1:10. I gotta go to bed. Let's see here. See how bad this looks now. Hey. There's not. Oh, there it goes. I was like, there's not moving. Up.
Leave it in the config.
What was that just happened though? Like, how did it move from that to the other one?
Removing.
Quiet. Yeah, these are just so bad. I get so frustrated when I come here. Look at these. Look at these images. Look at the magenta and the purples. What is? Look at all these purples. Fix your frickin' cameras.
$50 million a day.
$50 million a day, and we get the Barney planet. I mean, I don't even know how this can happen. You know, just fix it. Just fix it. No 24-hour feed, and you get a purple rendition of your planet. That's
It'll do.
it'll do. Nobody will ask questions. They trust us no matter what. This is just NASA basically laughing in our faces. So we could put this out, and people still don't question it. I mean, think about this. Through all that we're doing, NASA hasn't had to answer a thing. Not a thing. They've got Red's Rhetoric and other people that take care of their dirty work. What is this that's going on? What is this? Oh, this is from the spacewalk? I wonder if I could find that part. Does this show the whole thing? So I did actually prove to myself I was going to do a video, and I haven't done it yet. But I always kind of thought we'll never be able to prove that it's not live. But I was able to prove it. Yeah, this here. I think this video would be it. Let's see if we can find it. So this is the spacewalk. Why does this always do this to me? It didn't bring up the thing again. Sometimes when I do this when I'm streaming, it doesn't bring up the... Oh, there it goes. The buttons. Okay, so we're going to go ahead here. So, should be able to show you... Oh boy, is this thing all edited out? Oh, what's this? So what I found was that when they're coming out of the hatch, they're kind of going off away from the place that they came out, and then all of a sudden the video cuts, and then it went back like maybe a minute or two and showed the same scene again, but zoomed in this time. So that was all. I'd never seen anything like that, but it proved to me that it clearly isn't live, because it means somebody is sitting at some sort of controls, and the whole thing is not live at all. And it looked kind of weird because I'd have to show you, but in the corner of the screen it looked like something was going on that they tried to edit out by zooming in this shot and then replaying it. And I think they just missed the start point by about a minute. Let me see if I can find it here. This is really weird too, because the live feed that I was watching, there was not this. This thing cuts out for that 20 minutes or so that would have happened. That's weird. Yeah, between this time here, because these people are in this hatch, and then they come out, you know, maybe 15 minutes later, but this is all blocked by this screen, and then now they're already out. Luckily I saved it. Can't get by me. Let me see if they went out earlier than that, but I don't think so. So anyway, it's not live, moral of the story, which we kind of knew. And with the live editing software that's out there for like $300, or what was that, like $5,000 or whatever? 10,000. Still, that's nothing, right? There's live editing software that you can actually just sit there and use chroma key or use a live editor, and you just grab things, pull them out. Basically, you take like a screen capture of the way the ISS would look, and then at any point you can just pull out something and it just renders with what's behind it, which nobody would ever see. And in fact, their footage is so shitty that you would never see anyway. It's just that bad. So I guess they could have gone out here. Let me see if this is where they went out. What is that? Okay. This whole thing is ridiculous anyway. If you really think about it, I tried to understand it the other night. I couldn't because what they do is these two people go into this airlock, then they seal the door. Then the next thing you see is the baloney door opens. And then when the baloney door opens, then they do all their hat checks and they do all their button pressing and they make sure everything's good. But how did they open the baloney door? How did you open that? It makes no sense to me. I think that there must be somebody else that opens it. Maybe somebody who scuba dives on weekends. Let's see, they're in there, and yeah, so it would have been that next scene. And I do have it saved, but I don't know exactly where it's at right now. It's in my little portable drive somewhere. Let me see, is this going to be... Yep. That's so weird. That's the one part they got rid of by putting those bars there. Yeah, because this is when they're already out. Man, that's weird. Yeah, and this was like, it's the same thing if you ever watch these spacewalks. The more I'm watching them now, I just see it. Like, they'll never show you the Earth. I mean, you just don't see the Earth. You might get a glimpse of it, but I'm saying there's no way to, and that's why I was like, man, we'll never know if this is live because we can't match it with ground observations. But they proved that anyway, that it's not live. In fact, it could be 2 days before. How would you know? You know, there's just no way to prove that it's live if you can't see the ground. You just see, we just watched 3 hours. We didn't see the Earth one time. So it's just ridiculous. And then there were so many views we saw this time of like they'd be shooting from a faraway position and it would be illuminated by some sort of floodlight or something. But then the next scene would switch to an astronaut's helmet cam and it'd be pitch black. And they're like looking through, like they've got like a flashlight only. But it's like, well, where's those big floodlights we just saw that you were able to show those guys? I mean, Mrs. said maybe it was like night vision, but I don't think if they have night vision up there, then why aren't the astronauts using night vision rather than working in the complete black when it's evening or on the dark side of the Earth? So yeah, I mean, it's just disgusting. It doesn't look real to me at all. Not even the slightest. And you can totally, I mean, if there's one thing that's so obvious, should be obvious to anyone, is that they use GoPro footage. And that's kind of the weirdest thing. Again, this is where I think they do things in multiple ways to confuse you, because, and it might just be one of those psyop things where by me always questioning, well, why are they using a GoPro lens? That reconfirms in my mind that they're up there. And if they're not up there at all, then maybe they use the GoPro lens for people who ask that question, but that doesn't make much sense either. I just don't understand why they use, if they do use a GoPro lens, that should tell you that they are up there and that they are not showing a ball, so they have to use the GoPro lens to round it off. And I've thought many times before that they are up there. The problem with that, though, is I do not think any human being gets on a rocket and goes there. If they are up in the sky, well, then they're taking planes. And maybe they're, I don't know. I don't think they're out there, but it's one of those things where they definitely are not going to make it so you can just uncover what they're doing and then it be over. They have to make it in a way that even if you found something in one of these footages, they'd be able to show another footage that kind of disproves that. That's their whole point. What was that? Okay, I gotta watch that again. That was weird. One more time here. It looked like there was an extra hand there. I'm gonna watch this and then we'll be done. Yeah, so if you know anybody who knows about magnetics or declination or math, or I'd be willing to work with them trying to figure out something, because I think if you just take the declination and remap it, put everybody back at 0, basically, that could be it. Maybe the whole idea of declination is how they did it. I don't know. Oh, it's just like a render issue. Let me see if I can maximize this. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Why did I think I saw another hand? So these are his two. Huh. It was a little past that or something. And then it was the other guy. It's like the other guy. Get up here. Yeah, right there. What is that? Am I tripping? What is this right here? What is moving in between? Why does it look like it's somebody else's hand or something much? So right. So this guy's right hand and left hand.
The other astronaut's helping.
So who's filming this?
The astronaut's helmet.
Well, this is his left hand and this is his right hand. Looks like it's next to the astronaut. That's what looks weird about it. That's why I think I was tripping, because now watch when this guy starts. Okay, so this is this guy's left hand. And then okay, so left hand, right hand, and this guy's right hand. But he started doing something. It looked like somebody was holding this in the middle of him. Left hand. Let's see this. Like what's oh, this is a belt. Oh, it's probably nothing. I just thought I saw.
Save that video though, because I'm interested in that. I look interested.
Okay, so watch. Okay, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. Alright guys, it's been fun. Let me see if there's any final things, but it doesn't look like it. Alright guys, I should be doing these more often, trying to get this way. It just saves me having to do a lot of videos. Rather than do that, I just talk about these things this way. So check me out. It should be another day or two, and if not, then make sure you're there Sunday as we come back for Globebusters. Should be fun. I don't know what Bob has planned. Did he tell me? No, I don't think we have anything planned. I don't know if we have a guest or not, but check it out. It should be fun. We've been gone, so we've got lots to talk about. And have you come to a conclusion on Flamenco's work? I think it's definitely more true than the history we're taught. But the problem is with history is you'll never prove it. But again, I say that, but I mean, you can prove to yourself that all books were rewritten between 1400 and 1600. There is no older copy of a book than maybe 1100. So for all we know, our entire history could be 1,000 years. It could be. Who knows? But he definitely has a better methodology to... If you go back and look at the history of that stuff, our history is so screwed up. There's so many writers who wrote about a writer that was before them, but talked about things that weren't discovered for 20 more years, and it's all such a disgusting mess, and scholars just have to kind of go like, okay, I guess, because it's just too messy to ever rationalize. So even the history that we're given is a very broken assembly line of things that just don't make sense. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was writing and drawing machines and apparatuses that didn't get invented till like 400 years after that. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. If somebody draws a submarine or an airplane or a motorized bike or whatever it was that he was drawing, how can it take 400 years for those things to... It's just not the way things work.
That means he was alive a lot more recent.
Yeah, I think that it just makes much more sense to me. And then you look at the printing press being in the 1600s. It could have just all been... We can't say what happened before that. It's just too easy to pump out books with the storyline that you want to tell. And this thing came back on. All right. So anyway, you guys be kind to each other and don't lie. And remember to give big props to Yehoshahi. Till next time, guys. It's been fun, and we'll see you soon. This has been Jeranism. Peace! Okay, let me see. Over here, we've got... where was it? My gear, Canagoo, solar disk, the atmospheric tables. And of course, this person is a believer in the globe, and so they've got their here's the explanations of phenomena. Look at what you have to go through to explain this. Oh, well, let's see here. You know, we've got this going on, and the sun's really here, and it's shining up, and it's pushing the mountain up to here, which is making the sun look like it's here, but really saying, well, what a joke that anybody buys this stuff anymore. So what they're basically saying is the sun is here, shining on the mountain here, bending the image to the observer here, and so it appears to us that it looks like it's up here. This is what they actually have to sell people on, which is just crazy. Let me bring this up if I can. Try and translate this page. And is this the one? So, but even the owner gets to the end and is, why is that thing not working when I click it? There we go. Okay. And you know how it is when you translate sites. I mean, it's not good. It's, you know, not good at all. Let me see if I can find what I was talking about. So he was questioning, if I remember right, he's questioning the idea of it being a mirage. So you'll see that there's a section here, why those dates, what is the story, it talks about the forecast, because you can even, I guess, see it with the moon. I've never looked into this much, but I guess when the moon would rise or set in the same spot, you would have the same effect. Not, of course, because of this nonsense, but because you live on a plane, and in certain areas, under certain conditions, you can see proof that you live on a plane. So you don't need to believe in the magical ball. You don't need to believe in flying through the infinite space. You don't need to believe that you orbit the sun. All those fun things can go out the window once you realize that your senses and observation tells you exactly where you live, and you can let some men tell you some magical formulas if you want. That's up to you. Let me see if I can find where it was. I thought it was right here somewhere. Atmospheric refraction formula. So this is some sort of formula like this. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They're showing here, these are all your math equations, your betas, your thetas, your you name it. Oh, in conclusion, maybe this is where it was. Let me see, translate this. Okay. Nope, this isn't where it is, but let's read this anyway. In conclusion, it appears that the height of the horizon Canigou observed since Alash Marcel that it is relatively insensitive to the effect of temperature and pressure within variations detected on a period of 30 years. So, you know, these guys have been observing this for years. So, Jason, if you're out there, why don't you put a zipper on that hole on your face and do some research one time. One time. Before you go yelling and screaming that there's no 24-hour sun in the north, and before you go yelling and screaming that there's no such thing as sniping, all your nonsense, just zip it up. What was that? I don't know what just happened on my screen. That was a weird noise. No, don't know what happened. Sorry. Okay, so let's see what else. He says, yet another item that's not included in this calculation is the moisture content in the lower layers of the atmosphere. Even though the trip is mainly done over the sea, the humidity is involved, presumably also in large part to changes that we have seen during observations from one place. So it wasn't where I was talking about, because he did kind of question the idea of it being a mirage, but now I don't even see the word mirage anywhere. Maybe I'm missing it. Presentation, Alash. So this is pictures. Let's check this out. So, I mean, when you see something like this, yeah, you know, I mean, who am I to say, well, this can't be CGI, because, of course, I believe a lot of what NASA puts out is CGI, but nobody has a budget to put this out. And again, we have to ask ourselves the question, why would they be putting out something as a deception that is what they don't want to see? It certainly isn't the case. They don't want this to be the case. And when they built up the classified in the phenomenon of ordinary refraction, since there is no mirror image, not because it was stopped by an obstacle, but because there is not another possible path for light rays to reach us. We observe the chain of Canigou, a right image in the optical sense, i.e. not inverted, which is higher on the horizon because of atmospheric refraction. Like the stars that undergo so more pronounced atmospheric refraction, since it is, in this case, for light to pass through all the atmospheric layers. You guessed it, for me, Canigou is a phenomenon of ordinary refractive, but that the circumstances of his observation really make it not ordinary at all. If you wish to review the subject, you can send me a message. I will make sure to open a special page on this subject to allay your debate. So I just thought it was interesting, but anybody who just makes a video saying Jeran is deceiving you by showing you things that actually happen has lost their mind, but you should have realized that months ago. on the case and subject. So I'll check the chat in a second, see if anybody has any questions on that before I move on to the second thing. Let me see if I can bring the chat up here. Okay, that didn't work. Come on, chat. So again, I hope everybody is well. If you do have a question for me, just type question in all capitals and then go ahead and give me your question. This way I can answer it before I move on. Hopefully the chat is caught up. This doesn't look like it's moving. How can you get global warming out of a flat earth? It changes everything for Al Gore. Al Gore equals truth. No. Okay, so it doesn't look like anybody... Somebody saw the island of St. Thomas 40 miles away with binoculars. How do you explain mirages? Well, a mirage is exactly what we know it to be, which is a temperature differential and atmospherics, which is causing that wavy, almost distorted. We're going to get into that a little bit when we talk about buildings being obscured, but that's what's definitely going on there. So mirages, and I've gone over this before too. You've got, let's go look at mirages real quick because they're an interesting subject. If you look up the Wikipedia for mirages, they list, I think, 3 different types. Let's see how many. So they've got inferior, heat haze, which we know this is, it's not really a, I guess it can be considered a mirage. We know what it is when you've seen jet planes or airplanes that have that heat wave. Then they talk about a superior mirage and a fata morgana, nighttime mirages, mirage of astronomical objects. But just to go back real quick to what that person was saying on that site, is this is the same problem we should all have, is that there is no upside down image. And so it's not really a mirage. They'll tell you it is a superior mirage, but it simply isn't. And the reason that they don't want to employ refraction is it's just ridiculous to use that in that situation. You have to believe then that when we see the sun setting, that it's already way below the horizon. So what he said there in his, it was broken translated English, but he was saying, well, that doesn't seem right because we see the sun move continuously throughout the sky. So it's not like the sun kind of is in the sky and then all of a sudden it races to a certain point. And no. So we actually see the sun doing what we observe it to do. One continuous motion, one continuous speed. And that's why the whole idea of refraction is nonsense. Because if you go to like Metabunk or something like that, those guys will just describe it as saying, well, when you think you see the sun, you're actually seeing the sun below the horizon. And that's just, the fact that people will believe that tells me they'll believe anything. That's why it's not surprising to me that they were able to get this globe believed, because people just believe what they're told and they think they're smart because they can repeat it. So it could be anything. Let me go back and check if there's any chat here. But I wanted to go through these mirages just so we understand the different types, because a superior mirage versus a inferior mirage. So an inferior mirage is like when you go to the desert and you think you see a... make sure this is showing on the screen. There we go. When we're looking at this scene here, what I think people might not be realizing, which I thought was self-explanatory, but maybe not, is you cannot see 160 miles. Okay, that's impossible. There's too much atmospheric effects. You can't see that far. So I'm not saying that we're seeing the actual mountain here. This is the mountain that's here is blocking out the sunlight behind it. So perhaps he's confused because he might be thinking that I'm saying that we can see that mountain, but you cannot see it. For instance, if the sun is not here, it would look like this. Okay, so the entire horizon would look completely blank. That the only reason you can see the mountain, and you're not technically, it's not like we're seeing this mountain. What we're seeing is the sun blocked out by the shape of the mountain. Which is, technically, I guess, depending on how you look at it, that could be considered seeing it. But you're not going to see any features on it. You're not going to see a color. You're not going to see anything like that. This is just the sun being blocked out. And that's why, as I said, it's very rare. It's also one of the, I believe it's the current world record. Actually, I think there might be one longer for views. And so when we look at things like, is this one show? Yeah, so same thing back here. This is just because you're blocking out this view. If it was, say, noon, you would not see anything. Okay, so let me bring up another one here. Okay, so for instance here, if it was the sun was up here, well, you wouldn't see this mountain range. it would look like the horizon line was perfectly across. You would see nothing here because it's too far to see. Now, what you can see here is that this mountain range has now blocked that portion of the sun, so we're seeing the form of the mountain. So that's my question, or my guess, as to what he's so confused about, because he's saying we can't see 160 miles, it's impossible. All these cameras say they only see 32 miles. Well, that's great. This is a complete and total anomaly in the fact that it happens only 2 days a year, November 1st and February 16th. And you can go to Aloche, France. It's 1,000 feet high, and you can watch it. And there's a ton of people that do it. In fact, we'll see if I can bring up the website here. If you just search Canigou from Aloche, and what upsets me more than anything about that is when, you know, these are the kind of things that are huge proofs, and you know, you don't want to just shit on things. He was saying things like, oh, well, this is a deception, it's been placed here. No, they don't put the exact things they don't want out there. They don't want to know that you can see 160 miles. That's so rather than celebrate it and go look it up and see, oh yeah, there's a bunch of people who, oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Yeah, there's a bunch of people who see it. Now, most of these websites are in French, which creates a little bit of a problem. But like this entire website is devoted to this event. So for some idiot, for lack of a better word, to make a video saying Jeran is deceiving you by I'm showing an observation that people make every year, twice a year. People actually travel to go watch this. So, you know, Jason is just, I don't know what to tell you about that guy. Rather than go do some research, just call everything CGI. Oh, it's CGI. It's got to be CGI. CGI. This is CGI footage here. Well, if I had found one picture, then I wouldn't be bringing it up. This is something that I researched and saw, no, this is absolutely happens. It's interesting, too. If you get down here, let me translate this whole box. Because if I remember right, even the owner of this website questioned the... Hello? Translate this page. The whole idea of the globe when they built up the numbers and the curvature formula. The last thing they wanted was for occasionally, look at this, this is the moon here, occasionally for something like this to happen because it was going to bring up questions. So they don't want this exactly. But yeah, so I guess, you know, I did challenge Jason if he's interested to bet me. I'm willing to put my money that this is something that happens. That I don't think there's any reason why anybody would lie about it. Another interesting thing is if you notice here, I just was thinking about this, so the moon is red. Okay, so why is the moon red? You know, think about that one, because usually we get a red moon when we're talking about it being, so this must be somehow, they must consider it being in the Earth's shadow here. It's just the atmospheric shadow is all it is. Picture the sun is straight behind you, you're looking across at the moon and all the light's going directly across and lighting up the moon red. So that's why we have sunsets that are red. And let's see here. So this one here is interesting. What is this one? The sun or the moon? So I mean, that's another one that, now I'm not saying this is, because I don't know where this is from. Is it the same spot? But see how you can see this outline here? Now again, this is not, you're not seeing this mountain. So that maybe that's where the confusion comes in. You cannot see this far. But with the sun behind it, which you can see, it's having portions of it blocked out. So that's probably the best way I can explain it, at least a little better than before. Let's see here if I can find, where was the whole idea of the mirage? Atmosphere, solar horizon. Here we go. Now I see it. If that was there the whole time, I'm pretty pissed. Let's see here. We're going to translate this page. Just because I think it's interesting when somebody's put, look at the work this person who built the site has gone through. This is nonsense. And you get to the very end here, and you'll notice something interesting. So he says, having traveled encyclopedias and spent long periods surfing the net, I found that the concept of mirage encompasses all phenomenon, from near or far, altering the path of light rays in a continuous and gradual manner, without so far total reflection and thus occurrence of a reverse secondary image. This is for refraction close to the horizon, which brings up the highest distant objects in the sky than they really are in reality, as in the case of the stars setting in the horizon. So, in the sense accepted and generally widespread, we are in the presence of a mirage, in the case of Canigou, in a sense that we are actually observing a higher image above the horizon than the actual mountain range. So, now he stops and says, "Note to the reader that meets this definition. No need to continue reading the following. Far be it for me to get into a controversy. I just book you a little reflection." So now he's explained everything that he's found out. He explains the scientific understanding. And then he says, "Personally, I would have preferred a distinction to be made between the phenomenon that generated inverted second image obtained after a total reflection at least, and for refraction phenomenon always observed near the horizon moves the main image and only above the horizon. Of course, everything is a matter of convention, but this is too general of a definition and it bothers me." Move this box. "And it bothers me because when I watch a sunset on the horizon, I do not have the feeling of being in the presence of a mirage, just because there is a complete continuity of the apparent movement of the sun in the sky from sunrise to sunset. The term mirage, in a sense of visiting, often referred to a surprising or strange occurrence, does not seem appropriate to me in the case of the sun on the horizon, and because it does not correspond to something that occurs unexpectedly, known as duration is ephemeral, and that it is not reproducible from one day to another. If the Canigou, in my opinion," stop bringing up that box, "is not a phenomenon to be classified in the category of mirages, it is rather to be
Astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start.
2, 1.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jeranism, back with another live video for you this evening. Sorry I started so late. I did not know that IPS was going to be having his hangout and didn't want to step on any toes, so try and get that organized in the future so that that doesn't happen, because that's not what's supposed to happen. So, didn't want to step on any toes. Hope you guys are all doing well. That is the ultimate goal. So, this should be a quick one. I don't think I'm going to start, or I'm not going to cover too many items. I think I just have basically two things I want to cover. 1 second now, I'm testing myself, making sure that I'm there. Good. So I hope everybody's well, and I'll also check the chat here after I do a few things. I did want to read a quick news story. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it's a joke if there ever was one. This news story is: Denver physicist warns public that the fidget spinners could affect Earth's center of gravity. So one of the nation's most respected physicists has warned that fidget spinners, a fad device popular with students, could have a harmful effect on the Earth's center of gravity. In a research paper published in a leading scientific journal, Professor Scott Lee of Denver, Colorado, has outlined his findings that suggest the exponential growth of fidget spinners could theoretically throw the Earth's center of gravity out of alignment. While an individual fidget spinner is not going to cause any issues, the concern here is that with these toys becoming increasingly popular, their combined use threatens to create a cascade effect that could have wide implications. Professor Lee outlined how a cascade of fidget spinners rotating in the same direction could impact the rotation of Earth. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call a little bit of a bullshit on this one. No doubt about it. His calculation is that just a 0.06% variation in the Earth's orbit could cause widespread effects to our climate. Seasons would change overnight. Instead of summer, it would become winter immediately for one side of the globe, while the other side would suffer 10 months per year of blinding heat. The flow on effects to civilization would be huge. It says that his conservative estimate is that we would need over 10 million spinners, and if they were all spinning in the same direction at the same time, that we'd be risking the planetary equilibrium. Yeah, as I said, if you believe this, well, then I've got a beachfront property for you in Denver, Colorado, Available for sale right now. Act quickly before it's too late. So I thought that story was pretty classic. So the two things I wanted to cover today, if you saw my video about, well, what originally happened was I did the video on the view that we get of the Canigou Peak, and that is happening from Aloche, which is in France. And then what's his name, Awake Souls, came out with a video saying I'm deceiving everybody, and it's a deception. I've infiltrated the flat earth just to put in some bullshit views of 160 miles, and it's not possible, of course, all that fun stuff. So what I'm going to show you now is what I think might be happening, or what I am thinking is maybe his thought process, and you know, had to think about it again to say, okay, is this what he kind of means here? So when we're looking at